Hi, this is Carolyn Nee Lachlan, your hostess with the mostest of From Paper to People podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes, and while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 315, Fight Club Movie Review. Welcome to the show. I'm Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Time for another movie review from 1999. This time, Derek suggested that we watch and review David Fincher's Fight Club. So we're going to get to that. But before we do, Derek, besides watching Fight Club this week, what pop culture have you been able to get to?
Well, I only had an opportunity to take in one movie. We actually went to the movie theater. And we had a chance to watch.
I'm surprised you usually have so many things.
It's been a crazy week. We had a long weekend here in, I believe it was a long weekend in the U.S. as well. But we had a long weekend here in Canada, and there was just so much snow. I spent the whole weekend shoveling. It was crazy.
I think that we have Family Day. And in the States,
in Ontario,
they have.
we do.
Yeah, and in the States, they have President's Day. Lots to celebrate there.
Yeah. So, in any case, we had a chance to go to the theater and we saw the new Marvel movie. It's called Captain America: Brave New World.
Oh. And
I didn't realize that the subtitle was Brave New World. So I kept seeing all these things in my social media feed over the last couple of weeks saying, Brave New World this and Brave New World that and review Brave New World.
Aldous Huxley's book is really making a comeback.
I know there's a lot of comparisons to 1984 happening right now, but I'm like, I didn't realize people were also comparing it to Brave New World. And then, of course, I realized, oh, no, they're talking about the Captain America movie. But in any case.
Although the comparisons to Brave New World are very, very accurate, too.
Yeah, no kidding. We went out and had a chance to watch Captain America: Brave New World. I enjoyed it. It is getting terrible reviews.
Oh, okay.
And now, in all fairness, certain kinds of movies, especially a lot of the Marvel movies, get a lot of crap from mainstream reviewers. And it's like, I'll admit, every Marvel movie is not Iron Man, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, and Avengers Endgame. Like, those are the high watermarks for this franchise. But this was the 35th Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. They've done 35 of these, and they can't all be great, and they are not all great. Some of them are downright awful, but you don't know until you get there. And I think that the franchise, like the Marvel Cinematic franchise, is at this point now where, because it's been so successful financially, that the writers, directors, producers are sort of not necessarily bringing their A game. Not even so much the directors and the performers as much as like the studios behind them realize there is such a huge fan base for these movies now that no matter how good or how bad the product is, people are still going to go to the theater and see it. Very much like, say, the Star Wars movies. Like, some of them were awful, some of the newer ones, but because it had a name and a brand and a franchise people were familiar with, everybody went in hoping for the best and were sadly disappointed in many cases. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a movie based on comic books. It featured characters I liked. It advanced their bigger storyline a little bit. There were some critiques that some of the special effects were not great. Again, I can forgive a lot of that. I thought it looked okay. I thought that it gave me exactly what I expected it to give me. Now, one thing that I didn't really consciously pick up on, but as I was listening to some of the reviews, and I listened to some movie podcasts where they were reviewing it, they were talking about how a lot of newer movies, and especially a lot of large franchise movies, they now have dialogue in the movie where the characters describe what is being shown visually. So I'll give you an example. The characters in the movie were going to a military base. I think it was called the Echo Base. And so, as you know, part of the story, they find out like, oh, the bad guy is hiding at Echo Base, or what is this secret military Echo Base? And they talk about it, blah, blah, blah. Then they get in a Jeep and they drive there. And then as they arrive, you see them drive past a big sign that says like Echo Base. And it's like, you know, closed since 1986 or something. And then the characters go, hey, this is the place. This is Echo Base. We've arrived. And again, in the moment, I didn't really think anything of it. But as I was listening to these reviewers, they were talking about how like this is a specific instruction that writers are now being given with new shows and new movies, is that you need to assume a large portion of your audience will watch this at home and not be watching the movie. They'll be on their phone listening to the movie.
Wow.
And so you can no longer have important plot points only displayed visually. The dialogue has to call out anything that might be.
Oh my God.
So that people listening but not actively watching don't get lost. Now, again, if you're halfway paying attention to a movie like this, they've been talking about finding this Echo Base for 15 minutes. When they show up at a military base, whether you saw the sign or not, where the hell else do you think they were going? But I guess they figure
Club Med.
I don't know. I guess they figure, you know, if the audiences are stupid and not paying attention, that they need to do this. And I once they talked about this on the podcast and they gave a whole bunch of examples from this specific movie, I'm like, oh my God, they're absolutely right. That totally happened. Now, it didn't bother me in the moment. I didn't even pick up on it. I was watching the movie. But I've heard this critique about other shows and movies, especially shows and movies that are written specifically for Netflix and for Disney Plus, like that apparently this is a big thing in the movie and television industry right now. And it's like, now that I've said it, it's one of those things that you can't unsee. So now that I've said it, when you're watching anything new, it's going to jump out at you and it's going to piss you off. And I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent. But again, overall, just, you know, circling back, I enjoyed the new Captain America movie. I thought it was certainly not the best Marvel movie, but by no means the worst, which a lot of people are saying it's the worst. It's 35 out of 35. I got to disagree on that one. But again, it was what it was. I enjoyed it. So take that as you will. That was the only thing I had time to do this week.
Interesting. Oh, that's cool. So this past week, I spent, like, I think a lot of people, I spent time watching the various Saturday Night Live tributes that were going on. So in celebration of 50 years, there were different SNL specials this past weekend. And before this, actually, there was the 50 years of music. Derek, you mentioned
the
that
documentary. We talked about that last week or the week before.
Yeah. So then after, based on your recommendation, I watched it and it was really, really good. But this past weekend, things got kicked off on Friday with the SNL 50, the Homecoming concert. And then on Saturday, there was the SNL 50 anniversary special. So this is my take. I thought that the specials were like a microcosm for SNL because they were really hit and miss for me. I really didn't care for the Homecoming concert. So in addition to the musical guests they had on, they had a few music-related characters. Like they had Bill Murray's Nick, the lounge singer, and Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer. They play like music teachers, you know?
Yeah.
I felt they all went way too long. I mean, I love Bill Murray. You know, he's one of my all-time favorite cast members. He's been in some of my favorite movies of all time. But his lounge singer bit was way too long. And it was like drawn out. And it wasn't even like his old lounge singer bit. It was just, and then the musical guests come on. And they were all just a little bit off for me. There was Eddie Vedder and the B-52s and Devo. They were all just okay for me.
Sorry, Chris, did they perform together? Like, was it like the Grammys where artists match up and perform songs together?
No, Eddie Vedder came out and did 2 songs, and the B-52s came out and did a song, and Devo did a song, and I was like, they're just not very good. And like, they'd even play they played other people's music at times, and then this one guy comes out and play Bad Bunny. Of course, I know I'm old. I have no idea.
He's arguably one of the most popular singers right now.
And that's the thing.
He's hosted the show before. He's a great performer.
I had no idea who he was. So then I said to my one son, I'm like, who the hell is Bad Bunny? Like, I thought he kind of sucked. And then I said to my son, you know who Bad Bunny is? Like, oh, yeah, he's like one of the most famous, most popular singers in the world.
Yeah.
From the Latin community. It's like huge. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Do you think he's good? My son's like, no, he sucks. Like, oh, okay. So it wasn't just me then. Like, I don't know. And then this Jelly Roll guy came on. He's like, does like country, but he's like.
Yep. He performed at the Oscars this year. He did the song during the In Memoriam.
So when he came on, I actually turned the show off. I was like, you know what?
Too bad. He's a good performer.
I'm done with this. I was like, I didn't enjoy it. So needless to say, I wasn't a fan of the homecoming concert. But then the anniversary special on Saturday night was much better, I thought. So some highlights for me. Eddie Murphy impersonated Tracy Morgan on Black Jeopardy. And Tracy Morgan was like right beside him. That was really good. I loved Garrett Morris when he introduced Don't Look Back in Anger, which is one of my all-time favorite SNL shorts. But for me, the best part of the whole thing was Adam Sandler's song.
Yeah.
Oh my God. When he said like the first cast was the best. And then he went on to talk about how long we got to see like a whole slew of cast members. The part about Chris Farley and Norm Macdonald, that was the highlight for me. That was a really, really good song. And he's known for playing these goofy songs, when he was on the show. And this one definitely had a little goofiness to it, but it was also the perfect blend of like a little goofy and a lot of nostalgia. And it was kind of poignant too. I thought it was perfect.
Stand-up routines, Chris, because he's done some stand-up stuff in the last 10 years, and he almost always has a new one in his stand-up, and it's the same idea. It's like a little goofy, but it's still got to usually good music and some lyrics are like really, like they really touch you, and you're like, oh man, like you think like, oh, he's Adam Sandler, he's this goofy, man child, but it's like it's clear that he knows what he's doing when it comes to stuff like that.
No, I thought it was really, really good, and I thought his song was kind of the highlight for me. So anyway, that's what I did. So I got this for you.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
I don't keep track of this stuff. I write down a whole bunch of dad jokes, and I can't, for some reason, I don't think I've told this one yet. But anyway, I'm just going to try it. So Derek, we just found out that my grandpa is addicted to Viagra.
Okay.
And, we're all upset, but nobody's taking it harder than Grandma.
Jeez. Well, I don't know if you told that one before or not, but it hits a little close to home.
Yeah, we'll put that one to bed. Kelly Clarkson!
In your face, in the face.
Oh, got to be,
And we're going to do a police lineup.
Back yourself a pro. Let you get that gray matter back before you get TCB in, man.
The real money's in fart jokes.
They go down and smack 'em, yak 'em.
Well, what do you expect? They're Canadian.
Why are you always in such a bloody rush, man?
But he has AIDS.
Yeah, looky here. I can dig some of that grease, so chomp it on some butter, drag it through the gun.
Uncle
Ooh, I'm glad that's not me.
I hate to break it to you, lady, but you're sucking on my arm. All right, Derek. So we recently talked about 1999 in pop culture, and we decided to do a couple movies from there. I did Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace last week, and this week you wanted to do Fight Club. So I'm going to flip things over to you. Just kind of kick us off. Give us a little sort of a brief overview of like why you wanted to watch and review this movie. I'd never seen it, obviously, so...
Yeah, I didn't realize you had never seen it. Sometimes we talk ahead and I throw you a bunch of topics or a bunch of movies and say like, hey, have you seen any of these? I was unaware you had not seen this. I've actually been looking for an excuse to go back and rewatch this. I've probably seen this movie maybe a dozen times. This, I really enjoy it. I think it's great, and we can get into that. But it's not one of these ones that that's on TV a lot or on the movie channels frequently. So it's not just like, oh, it's on, I'll watch it again. And it's long, like it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, give or take. And it's one of these movies where you sort of need to sit down and watch it right from the beginning. So it's not one, again, you're not likely to just jump in at the halfway point and go like, oh, I'm just going to watch these couple of scenes. And so for that reason, I find that I need to be in the right mood and be like, okay, I've got 2.5 hours carved out. I'm going to sit down and watch this movie right now. So I have seen it probably around 10 times. If the over and under was 10, that would probably be about right. I haven't seen it in, between 5 and 10 before the pandemic, for sure. I have not seen it since then. So like, it's been a while, and it's been on my list of movies that I want to go back and revisit. So selfishly, that was part of why I recommended it, because it gave me that excuse to do it for the podcast. But I know that the movie has a lot of heavy themes in it. And so I felt a lot of them were probably still relevant or possibly more relevant now than they maybe were in 1999. I also know that this movie has sort of an edge to it where people have latched onto it for some of the wrong reasons. You have a lot of like dude bro guys are like, yeah, Fight Club's my movie. And it's like, do you guys really understand what's going on in this movie? Like, it's not just about guys punching each other in the face. And I think, unfortunately, the crowd that wants that has latched onto it and sort of got their own narrative out of it. So again, I wanted to sort of go back and revisit it for me, but I also wanted you to, in this case, see it for the first time and sort of get some of your takes on it. Plus, again, I remember that it's got good performances. I love David Fincher as a director, and so it was nice to go back and just have that style attached to the movie and the way he shoots a film. I mean, obviously, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are both still big stars that have had very successful careers over the last 25 years. So it's nice to go back and see these guys in their 1999 selves. And there was a lot of things that I wanted to go back and revisit about this movie. And of course, we're going to talk about this movie. We're going to spoil some things. So if you've never seen Fight Club, you wanna turn off the podcast, go watch it, and then come back. Or if you don't care about spoilers, keep listening. But now that you've seen the movie, Chris, the fact that there's this reveal where you find out that the narrator and Tyler Durden are the same character. Going back to rewatch it, knowing that detail, and we talk about this all the time with movies where there's something is revealed, going back and then you get to sort of see the clues and see the hints and see some of the little details. And I personally found that, this upon the second and third viewing, I picked up so much more out of this film that I felt made it even better. So again, that was part of the reason I wanted to revisit it, because it had been so long. I wanted to watch it again and see if those details were as apparent to me, knowing what I know, but also I was watching it sort of through like your lens. Like, if I was coming to this for the first time, are these hints so obvious that an astute viewer will pick up on them? Or are they subtle enough that they feel natural as they're happening, but upon a second viewing, you're going to watch it and go, well, of course, this is what he's saying, because this is what he really means by it. Or of course, this little detail is happening. So anyway, we can get into all of this stuff as we go, but you had never seen this film before. I'm curious as to what are your initial takes.
So I'll be honest, I think I'm still digesting this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the hell I just watched it, to be honest. I will be relying on you to do some of the heavy lifting this week, because I'm going to have a ton of questions. One other thing I will say is it is long. And I actually, I'm always so busy and like I got kids and I always got things on the go. I had to actually watch it over 2 sittings. Mm-hmm. I wasn't able to watch it all in one go. I watched the first part was probably, like an hour and 50 minutes. And I watched the last half hour, the next time. So I got through most of it because it is pretty long. It was, we'll get into this. So it was directed by David Fincher, as you mentioned. The screenplay was Jim Ulls did it. It was based on a book, Fight Club.
Yeah, the book was fantastic.
Did you read it? It was Chuck.
I did. I read it after I saw the movie. Not long after I saw the movie. Like, the movie's 99. Probably in the next year or two, I read the book. And then I went and read everything Chuck Palahniuk had written. I think at that time, he'd written 4 or 5 books. So I immediately went out, bought them all, read them all. Some I loved more than others. And to this day, I'm still a big fan of his work. I've read most of his stuff. I really enjoy his writing.
So it was released on October the 15th, 1999. It was made on a budget between $63 to $65 million. The box office, it took in $101 million worldwide, but only $36 million at the domestic U.S. box office. So it lost money when it first came out. And that was good enough for 56th spot that year. It was behind movies like 10 Things I Hate About You and My Favorite Martian, but it was ahead of films like Lake Placid and Superstar. So one of the things we like to talk about is the cast of the movies. I want to start out by talking about some people who didn't get cast in this movie. So Sean Penn was actually considered to play the role of Tyler Durden.
Really?
Yeah. I
think he would have been too old, but it would have been an interesting performance.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I mean, he could have probably pulled it off. And the interesting one, though, was Marla Singer, Helena Bonham Carter. So Fincher wanted Janeane Garofalo to play the part. And
wow.
I know, interesting. And then he pitched it to Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and then she didn't want to do it. And so some others that were considered for the part didn't get it, obviously. Jodie Foster, Anna Friel, Courtney Love, Winona Ryder, and Kira Sedgwick.
Now, I had heard that they ultimately offered it to Reese Witherspoon, and she turned it down because she felt that it was too dark.
She
now,
did.
I don't know if that's true, but I read that.
That's true. And Fincher also felt she was a little bit too young for it too. And then Renee Zellweger also turned it down because she said it was too dark too. But Sarah Michelle Gellar almost got the part, but she couldn't take it because she was doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So she wasn't able to do that. Edward Norton, though, it just seemed like he was always sort of cast in that role. Mm-hmm. And let's start with him, actually, because he's been nominated for 4 Academy Awards. So he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Primal Fear, and also for Birdman and A Complete Unknown. Birdman. And then he was nominated for Best Actor for American History X.
Yeah.
He's got 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Supporting Actor for Primal Fear, and which he won, actually. And then he was also nominated for Birdman. Mm-hmm. And he was in a movie that you had me watch for the podcast, Eric, The People versus Larry Flint.
Yeah.
And he was really good in that movie. I remember
and I heard his performance in that was what helped him get this movie.
Yeah, that makes sense, because he's kind of in that movie. It was interesting because he plays this like lawyer, but he was kind of an everyman. But like he was kind of approachable and likable. So he was an interesting guy because he got a degree in history from Yale and then decided, I want to pursue acting. So he did. And he started in Primal Fear, obviously nominated for an Oscar. But he's never been a guy to star in any like big splashy Hollywood blockbusters. Although he was in The Incredible Hulk, I guess.
Yeah,
so he did a Marvel movie.
One, yeah, and then they recast him.
But yeah, there's been so many Hulk movies, like they sort of all blend together. So, but yeah, he's never really been like a huge movie star or anything like that. He's very picky with his parts. And
I mean, sorry, from because I'm a fan of his work and I like a lot of the movies he's been in. I mean, hell, even on this podcast, we've reviewed Rounders, we've reviewed The People versus Larry Flint.
He was in Rounders too, wasn't he?
Yeah, like we've done a few of it, and from what I hear is he's reportedly difficult to work with because he's like a perfectionist. He wants it the way he wants it, and apparently he's also a pretty decent screenwriter, and so he always wants to have his finger in that pie, where he wants to work on the dialogue, he wants to change the script, and in some cases they hire him on because they know he has that ability, and in other cases when he's hired on, he doesn't really listen very well when they say, no, we don't want your input on this. Again, whether or not these rumors are true, it would explain, in my mind, it would explain a little bit why he hasn't had more of those big breakout moments. If he is difficult to work with, then I think, you get that picking and choosing of the directors, and the producers are like, man, this guy's a pain in the ass. Let's pick someone who's a little easier to work with. So who knows? But I enjoy his work. Like if when he's in something, I'm like, okay, he's in this, I'm going to give it a shot. And for the most part, I've always been happy about it.
Yeah, he's a pretty good actor. And speaking of good actors, Brad Pitt, I want to mention, this guy could have just been like a total Hollywood pretty boy. Because, I mean, damn, he's so good looking. And let me tell you, I know my wife reminded me of this constantly as we were watching this movie.
Well, he takes his shirt off a lot in this movie, and it's like, I don't think he's ever looked physically better. Like, again, it's like when actors do a boxing movie, and it's like, oh, look at this guy. It's like, yeah, of course, he wants to look as good as he can ever be. And it's, I don't think this was definitely the apex of Brad Pitt's physical body perfection. Like, yeah. Anyway.
But the thing with him is, like, instead of just being this like super good looking leading man, he decided, no, you know what, I'm really gonna hone my craft, and he became he's a hell of an actor. He takes weird roles. He's never really been a total sort of mainstream actor. You know what I mean? Like, I know that sounds weird, it's Brad Pitt, but he takes all these bizarre roles all the time. Like, I got to give him credit. He's a hell of an actor. He's been very critically successful because he has been nominated for 4 Oscars. So in 1994, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for 12 Monkeys.
Right. Forgot about that.
2007, he was nominated for Best Actor for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yep.
Nominated for Best Actor again in 2010 for Moneyball. And in 2018,
he should have won for that.
He was really good at that. And in 2018, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which he won. Yeah. But even if you look back at his early stuff, like in Thelma and Louise, and I remember him in this movie called A River Runs Through It. Mm-hmm. He was really good. He reminded me of like a young Robert Redford in that. I was like, this guy is going to be a movie star. You could tell. One thing he hasn't done, though, is comedy. He hasn't done a comedy.
Well, he was in Burn After Reading, which was more of a satire type comedy. I haven't seen it. But
you could argue that he was supposed to be funny. That movie was just dumb, though, I thought. But
I honestly, I haven't seen it.
He showed a good sense of timing in Ocean's 11.
That's true.
Mostly that scene in the elevator with George Clooney, but that was like all improvised. Remember that where he's like, have you been practicing that? I was like, yeah, did I rush it?
Yeah.
But he's got the timing, but he's never done comedy, which is interesting. Okay, so I want to talk about Helena Bonham Carter. So she is a really good actress, like incredibly unique and unconventional. I did not know all that much about her coming into this, but I will say coming out of this movie, I'm actually a fan of hers. She's quite good. So in 1997, she was nominated for Best Actress for The Wings of the Dove. Now, she lost to Helen Hunt because Helen Hunt won for As Good as It Gets. But in 2010, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for The King's Speech.
Oh, right.
Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. Now, she lost to Melissa Leo in The Fighter, which, I can see that. And she was married to Tim Burton for a while there, too.
For years, yeah.
Yeah. She was also married to Kenneth Branagh before that. Yep. But the one thing like that stood out to me, too, about her is like she has this incredible sex appeal about her. And like I was saying that to my wife, and like I was trying to explain to her, like there's a difference between beautiful and sexy.
Yeah, that's fair.
You can be, you can be both, or you can be one. But like she's like, because my wife is like, well, like there's some women that are so beautiful. Yeah, but she might be beautiful, but it doesn't mean she's sexy.
That's true.
And I feel like Helena Bonham Carter is very sexy. Like she has sex appeal because she's so interesting and unique. But just like an unbelievably talented actress. Like, but again, not mainstream. Doesn't do a lot of stuff that is like in those like blockbuster films.
Well, I mean, she had supporting roles in a lot of the Harry Potter movies, but again, I wouldn't say, hey, we're going to see that new Helena Bonham Carter movie, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
No.
But again, those casts were so huge, like everybody was in them. But yeah.
I want to mention Meatloaf because he was in this and I thought he was great.
He was fantastic.
Oh my God.
His name is Robert Paulson.
Yeah. With the large breasts. Now, he's done some other acting. He's done quite a bit. He was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Eddie, obviously. And he had a cameo in Wayne's World, which we reviewed recently here on the podcast. But I thought he was really good. And I want to mention Jared Leto. I didn't even know he was in this movie until the credits.
Yeah, he's a small part. And this was before he really broke out. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know who he was. People were like, oh, Jared Leto. I'm like, who's that? Oh, he was the guy in this. I'm like, really? And then, now he's a someone. But back then it was like, oh.
But he's always been a chameleon, too.
Yeah.
Like, he just totally immerses himself in his roles. And I wanted to give a shout out to Zach Grenier. He's the guy that played Edward Norton's boss.
Yeah.
Recognized him right away. He was in Twister. I remember he was one of the bad guys with Carrie Elwes.
I recognize him from The Good Wife, and then
you watched.
He was one of the law partners. He was like this sleazy divorce lawyer, I think. Yeah, but he plays that kind of role all the time. He's been a working actor forever.
Oh yeah, he's a great character actor. And then the director you mentioned, you're a big fan of David Fincher.
Oh, I love Fincher.
Because remember when we did our top 5 favorite directors, he was on your list.
He absolutely was.
So he got started directing music videos.
You bet he did.
Like Rick Springfield and Christopher Cross and the Motels. He did some videos for The Outfield. I always liked those guys. Paula Abdul, Madonna, Sting. Like just the list goes on and on. And his first movie was Seven, I think, was his first feature film. So what is it about Fincher that you like so much from his movies and just his style and stuff?
I think it's a combination of the kinds of stories he chooses to tell, and then just the way he puts it together. Like, excuse me, some of my all-time favorite movies of the last 30 years are ones that he's directed or been attached to. I mean, Seven, love it. The Game, not a huge movie, but fantastic. Fight Club we're doing tonight. He did, I'm just scrolling through Social Network, arguably one of the most important movies of the last 20 years, and I think will continue to be recognized as an important film down the road, and that's definitely one we're going to do on this podcast. He did the English language adaptation of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which again was really good. I recently rewatched it. It's fantastic. No, he's got a way of telling a story, and he likes to choose these like interesting stories. I never get the sense from him that it's like he's just cashing a paycheck. Like, I don't think you're ever going to see him do something like a Marvel movie. Like, he's clearly an artist with a vision, and he wants what he wants, and he's now been successful enough and has enough partners in the industry that he can do what he wants to do. Like, I love that he's partnered himself with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, and the two of them work collaboratively on like most of his movies now, where Trent Reznor does the score. And Trent Reznor's won an Oscar doing work for this guy. Like, it's always interesting when you learn about these creative relationships that happen where directors latch themselves onto certain actors or actresses, or in this case, musicians, and they work together for years. Like, you have someone like Spielberg and John Williams, like they worked together collaboratively for years. You have Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. Like, how many movies have they done together, right? And you just end up with these partnerships of these creative people, and it's like the work they do together is just outstanding. So no, I think he's definitely among the top directors of this generation. I think that, if you're putting together that top 5, top 10 list of the best directors the last 25 years, I don't think you get many arguments from people that he belongs on that top 10 list. I'm probably going to have him ranked a little higher than others, but he definitely has a place on that list.
And like when he was doing this film, he shot like twice as much film as is usually done for a movie, which meant like editing it must have been just a real pain in the butt. But yeah, like he definitely has his own style. I want to talk about the themes of this film. So here's my question for you. And I'm sure a lot of people have this question watching. What the living hell is this movie about? What is the theme of this film? I'm trying to figure it out.
So, I mean, again, I've seen it a bunch of times. I've read the book and I've read a lot of stuff about the movie, but I think ultimately it's about the idea of capitalism and the fight against capitalism, right? The haves and the have-nots from an economic point of view. Like, that's a big part of this movie, how the people that are in Fight Club, and they even talk about this, it's the people that make your food, take out your trash, drive your buses, clean your office buildings. Like, it's the traditional, what do they call them during the pandemic? The essential workers. Like, it's all of those people that are necessary for a society to function, that are often overlooked, underpaid, undervalued, but are immensely important and just don't get the recognition they need, whether it be financial recognition or just the glory and the fame that should come with some of these professions. And in a movie like Fight Club, that's a big part of the behind the scenes story is how you've got this group that eventually they take on this Project Mayhem, and they start fighting back in a way that they're not eco-terrorists, they're like capitalistic terrorists. I don't know, there's a term for it, I can't think of it, but
but they start out by fighting each other, and it's like, are they doing that like just because they're I think they mentioned at one point in the dialogue, you want to feel alive by doing this and stuff like that. I don't know, like,
well, he talks about in one of the scenes, and I was reading about this, how he says, like, they talk about we're a generation of men raised by women. And so that has skewed the perspective of men from what has historically been the norm. Now, in this movie, they talk about
every generation of men is raised by women. I don't understand.
Well, but then they also talk about they coined the term snowflake. Apparently, this is the first time this was used in like media or pop culture, the idea of, you think you deserve acknowledgement and you deserve a ribbon for participating, like you're a gentle snowflake. And in the dialogue, Tyler Durden even says, like, you're not a snowflake, you don't deserve these things. And I think initially with the Fight Club, with the actual fighting part of it, it's how do these people that are living boring, monotonous lives feel something, feel alive, feel like they're important, get in touch with themselves. And so that's, these guys end up having this underground boxing club where they beat the crap out of each other. And like, I think one of the scenes the guy says, he goes, you know, this waiter in this restaurant is a nobody, but for 10 minutes this weekend, he was the king of the ring when he beat the crap out of some other guy. And so it's that idea of giving someone a sense of purpose, even if it's a short-term temporary sense of purpose, you know, juxtaposed against the idea of the capitalism and the materialism and what you have defines you, or does it define you? Should it define you? And by freeing yourself of these material possessions and starting over and taking a different perspective, how does that change things? And I think that kind of a message is certainly as relevant today as it ever was, as you see some of the things happening in the world around us, especially in the US, where you have this immensely wealthy people at the top of the pyramid that are just getting richer and richer on the backs of the poorer and poorer, and taking steps to ensure that the poor stay poor and the rich get richer. It's like, you know, you look at a movie like Fight Club, you look at the themes that are in here, and you're like, you know, you have these people essentially rebelling against the system.
It's going to take them blowing up the financial system to reset everything, sort of thing.
He even says that. Yeah. He's like, they're going to blow up these credit card companies, and they're going to blow up all the records, and it's going to put everyone back to zero. But he doesn't even say it puts everyone back to zero and we're going to start off from fresh. He says it's going to put it back to zero, which will cause utter chaos.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I read where Fincher said it was a coming of age movie like The Graduate. And I was like, what? No way. And then the screenwriter described it as a romantic comedy. I'm like, are these guys punking us? Because
I don't know.
I'm not taking these things from this movie.
I read a ton of stuff this week, and I didn't once read any of those things. So yeah, you might have just been reading things that were like made up deliberately to,
I don't know,
to rile you.
They were quotes from those guys. So I want to just go back to a second, because, you know, I want to talk about the split personality thing and stuff. And you were saying, like, you know, on, you know, your second viewing and stuff, like, you know, you pick some of this stuff because you know what's going on, so you're looking for the clues. I actually picked up on some of this stuff early.
I figured you might,
because the scenes where Brad Pitt and Ed Norton they're never in the frame together with Helena Bonham Carter. As soon as she walks in the frame, he walks out, and they're never in it together. So I picked up on that right away, and I was like, whoa, what's going on with this? And the other thing was, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, I actually questioned her existence, because there's a scene where she walks into traffic and the cars are all going all around her. I'm like, does she even exist? Is she a figment of his imagination? Because a person would have walked out there and been hit by traffic, and she wasn't. And she turns around and has a conversation with him, and cars are like zooming past her. And so, like, I don't know. So I was picking up on those sort of things. Another note I made, subliminal images. I want to talk about this.
Yeah. Did you pick up on that stuff before they described it in the movie?
I did, because because when Brad Pitt's working as the film projectionist in the movie, he talks about how he likes to like splice pornographic images into the movie. He's like, it's only a frame, so it flashes so quick. People don't pick up on it consciously, but like, I guess subconsciously they do.
Yeah.
But before that, there's a scene in the one support group where there's a guy standing there. I think it's the guy that's like leading the group. And just for a quick flash, there's a guy like dressed in red standing behind him. And I was like, whoa, did I see that? And I rewound it and I watched it again, and it was there again. And I think it was like Brad Pitt's character, because it was like the red leather
Tyler
jacket.
in the red leather suit. There's three or four of those that I caught on this viewing from the beginning of the movie until that scene where they explain it. And again, the first couple of times through, I didn't even notice it. But once I knew to watch for it, once you know they're there, you do pick up on them. And there's a bunch of them.
So I want to talk a little bit about the DVD, because I remember when this came out, like, people went crazy. They went nuts for the DVD. And I was like, why? And I guess it was one of the first DVDs that had like multiple audio commentaries and had tons of extras. You're a huge DVD guy. I'm assuming you have this movie on DVD?
Oh, for sure. The super deluxe special edition, creative, whatever. Like,
so what makes it all so special? Why is this one of the best DVDs ever made?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but it has a ton of special features. And
so the only reason I'm going to jump in. The only reason I mentioned it, I remember reading an article in Entertainment Weekly Used to love always reading that.
Yeah.
And they had a list of like the best DVDs ever. This was number 1 on their list.
So I think partly because people love the movie, so that's a big part. People want to own it. But this one has an audio commentary that features Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and David Fincher together doing a running commentary of the 2.5-hour film, which a lot of movies had that in the late 90s and early 2000s. I mean, it's still to this day, a lot of movies do have them, not as many as they used to. But the fact that the three of them were on it and they were like dishing the dirt, like they weren't holding back. They were talking about like real things that were happening and how they felt. Like a lot of these audio commentaries were not all that valuable. Like there's one of the ones, I want to think it's Boogie Nights, where Mark Wahlberg's doing the audio commentary and he's literally answering his mobile phone and taking personal calls while the recording's happening. Like it's clear he has no desire to be doing this and is contractually obligated and is like barely present. And you sort of think, why am I wasting my time listening to this? Like I feel dumber for listening to these stupid commentaries. Right. But this one with Fight Club was fantastic. I haven't listened to it since the DVD came out, but after watching it again this week, I thought I may go back and give it another listen. Again, if you're a movie fan like we are, where you're like, really into movies, it's that extra little bit. You get something out of it. Like it's certainly an audio commentary is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And my brother, for example, is a big movie guy as well. I try to get him to listen to some of these commentaries and he's like, no, I've seen the movie. I watched the movie. I don't give a crap about this other stuff. And again, some people just aren't interested and that's fine. That's their choice. But for me and for people like you, like I studied film, I went to movie classes. Like when I find a movie I like, and then I find out there's more to the movie than what I've already seen and heard, I'm all in. And sometimes, like I just gave with the Boogie Nights example, the commentary was terrible. But a lot of the times you can really get a sense of like who the director is, who the performers are, why they were interested in this movie, what did they take away from it, and whether or not they enjoyed the experience of making it, whether or not they actually agreed with the themes that were in it. Like it can be quite fascinating for those that are fans of this kind of thing, which I am.
I want to talk about some of the scenes. So where they go and get the bag of the liposuction fat
yeah.
and they take it and it like rips on the barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Basketball. Remember with Trey Parker when he had that plastic bag of Marlon Brando's liposuction fat and he was like drinking it with the straw? Remember that? He was like, ooh, it's all salty and warm. It reminded me of that. It was like so gross. It was just disgusting. And they were saying that that's the best fat to use for soap, apparently. But that was interesting. I also liked the scene when they had to do like homework and the homework was they had to start a fight with a stranger.
Yeah, and lose. And
it was interesting because like they made a good point. They said, this is harder than you think because most people will do almost anything to avoid a fight. Yeah. It's so true. Except in that scene, the priest was the only one who fought back. He came back and started punching the guy. I thought it was such an interesting scene. I like that. I also liked how...
Sorry, Chris, let me stop you. Let me ask you this. Maybe this is something you were going to bring up later, but I'm going to ask you now. Sure. Have you ever been in a fight in real life? Like a real fight?
Yes, I have. Have you?
No. Well,
no, never been.
No, well, I mean, I remember like when I was very, very young, like probably 10, 11, 12 years old, just one of my buddies and I got into it. And it was like, it took 2 seconds. He swung at me and missed and I swung at him and hit him and he fell down and that was the end of that. But no, to your point.
For me, the only fight I was ever in, it was I was picked on. I was bullied a lot in grade school. And this one guy bullied me all the time. And finally in grade 8, I fought back and I beat the living snot out of him. And guess what? I never got bullied again.
Yeah.
But so it's always been a lesson I've always learned throughout life. Bullies deserve a punch in the nose. Yep. But no, that was it for me, really. Mm-hmm. So.
No, but it's a good point. Yeah, I think because I've had situations, again, whether they're at work or whether, at a sporting event where clearly someone's just getting revved up and it's like you do anything you can to de-escalate it, whether it's walk away or agree with them when you don't really agree or, try to talk your way out of it or sidestep it or whatever. And they're absolutely right. Like, especially in the age we are now where everyone would sue somebody else if they got hurt, right? It's like I think people are more conscious of, it's not just two guys having an argument in a bar, go outside, beat the crap out of each other, and that's the end of it. It's two guys in a bar get into a fight, they go outside, one guy punches the other guy, and he gets sued for $10,000. It's like, it's just not like it used to be. And I'm not saying that it should be that way, but I think that's the reality of the world we live in. Nobody wants to be financially liable for punching somebody or hurting them or breaking their arm, or, you know, oh, this guy can't do his job for the rest of his life and you're beholden to him for $1 million. It's like, you know what? Sure, his team was better than my team. It wasn't worth punching him in the mouth.
Yeah, sometimes it's not worth getting involved because you will, for your whole life, you'll be tied to that person in some way. It's not worth it. Just walk away.
Not usually.
I wanted to mention too, one scene I thought was interesting is when Brad Pitt is explaining how projectionists do their job. And how they like sync up the two reels and like people don't notice. And then halfway through this movie, the film, like the camera shakes as if the film reel is being changed over, like in the movies. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I really felt that the first act was the best part of this movie though. Like,
I agree.
After that, it devolves into it gets kind of messy, but I like how he goes to these support groups and he struggles with insomnia. I also thought like that testicular cancer group, I wonder if that was a metaphor too. Like, I'm sure it was. You know, I mean, this movie is like steeped in testosterone and the fighting and the anarchy and all that. So maybe they're playing on the idea, like, you know, what's more emasculating than losing your testicles, right? So that was going on. I like the scene when he turns himself into the cop. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, actually. When he turns himself into the cops and they turn out to be members of Project Mayhem. I was like, whoa, that was like cool. That I thought was pretty neat.
Well, and the fact that none of them had their face beat up, because up until that point, anytime he'd go somewhere and he'd see guys with black eyes and scars, you're like, okay, clearly this guy's a part of it. Even like, I think in one of I want to say it's in the dry cleaners where he's like, trust me, I'm a member. Look at my face. And like the two guys are talking to each other and they both have black eyes. It's like clearly they're both doing this. Right. But yeah, I noticed that too. Again, I honestly, I find that even though I had seen the movie, like I said, a bunch of times, when I was watching it this week, I found that most of the last half hour, I didn't really remember very well because I think to your point, the first hour is so strong. So much happens so quickly. The characters are introduced, the way it comes together. But I do find that sort of in that third act, is definitely the weakest of sort of if you want to construct it as a 3-act play. I felt the third act to me is the weakest. I do feel the whole overall thing is strong. I like the overall message at the end. Like I like the very end, but I just found that last sort of 20-25 minutes. I felt that it was less memorable to me clearly because I didn't remember it. So to your point with that scene, when I watched it, I was like, oh crap, these guys are the cops. Because I knew at the end he's in his underwear and I just couldn't remember why he was in his underwear. Like, what happens to his pants? And it's like, oh, these guys, So,
and speaking of the end of the movie, like what happens when Edward Norton shoots himself in the head? Like, did the bullet just go at the side of his mouth, or did he actually, like? Because I was watching, I thought he actually blew his head off, and he was like dead. He blew his brains out, and then, but somehow he was still like got up and was talking to Helena Bonham Carter. Was it like a dream or something? Like.
Well, you saw it looks more like the gun was slightly a kilter, and it looked like the exit wound was just below his ear, like he sort of shot like the side of his jaw. So there was, you could see the blood coming out and the smoke from the residue from the bullet. But when they showed the Brad Pitt character, Tyler Durden, they showed him from behind, and you can see like the back of his brains are all blown out.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't figure it out.
I think it's more just the metaphor of, you know, the character is struggling with this split personality and he has to literally harm himself in order for the other, his imaginary friend, he calls him in the movie, in order for him to stop seeing Tyler, he physically needs to shoot himself. And so his brain can then, process it in such a way to go, Tyler doesn't live through this. Again, I'm not a mental health expert. I don't know what I'm talking about, but that was sort of my take on how it came together.
Ultimately, I guess I just struggled to figure out what the movie was about, like what it was trying to say. Like as I mentioned, it wasn't a coming of age film or romantic comedy.
No, of course not.
So I guess in some ways I struggled with the message and stuff. So I don't know.
So I want to just talk about that for a second. Then. So I'd said at the outset that, I think. I like that a lot of people like this. I think a lot of people like it for a lot of we'll call it the right reasons. But I do know that it has gained a huge following with a lot of people for some of the wrong reasons. Especially you have like these young, angry men, the kind of men that are like, you know, why won't women sleep with me? Women are the problem. And
the incels.
I found with this movie, one of the things that I thought was really good was never, at no point in the movie, are these guys violent against women. That is never discussed. It is never implied. You never see them being bad to women. It's always the men fighting other men. And I think, unfortunately,
in fact, if anything, it seems like they're more interested in fighting each other than having sex with her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's crazy.
And
right?
I think the problem is a lot of people latch onto this movie and all they get out of it is, I need to be violent to feel something. And I think, you know, you have represent the wrong kind of people attaching their beliefs to this movie in a way where they promote violence against all sorts of people for all sorts of reasons. But never in this movie do they talk about being violent against women or people with disabilities or people who are LGBTQ or people who look different than you, whether it be color or race or religion or beliefs. That is never brought up. It's never implied. It's never in the subtext. And I specifically, when I watched it tonight, or well, this week, I finished watching it today, I was specifically looking for that kind of undertone. Like, is it there and I haven't been seeing it because that's not how I think? Or is it genuinely not there? And honestly, I looked for it and I didn't see any of that in this movie. And like I said, I've seen this movie a few times. So when I hear people saying like, oh yeah, you know, Fight Club's my manifesto, and then you hear what else they're talking about, it's like, did you even watch the movie?
They're pulling different things out of
Or
this.
did you just fast forward to the fighting parts? Like, you know, are you picking up on the homoeroticism or like what's going on? Like, because there's certainly some of that in here.
And again, I think that's why I struggled to figure out what it was all about. Like, because I think certain people can interpret different messages from this film, you know, just like you said.
Sure. But, you know, when you hear or read or see people pulling a message out of this movie that's clearly not there, clearly not implied, clearly not discussed, clearly not shown on screen. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to talk about this movie being a violent movie? Sure. You want to talk about like
because it is.
Violence?
It's very violent.
There's tons of violence. There's blood. There's gore. There are deliberate acts of violence where characters take on other characters in this film, and there's no disputing that. But it's always the men fighting the men, and they talk about how these fights are always consensual in the Fight Club itself, and how when a guy taps out, you stop, and they go as long as they need to go. Like, again, it's very structured and very deliberately done in a certain way, I think, to address the kinds of concerns that unfortunately have followed this movie for a long time. But no, I do really enjoy this movie, and I really like it, and it definitely makes my top 20 all time films. You know, I would definitely recommend that people who maybe haven't seen it, if you haven't seen it and you've listened to this whole podcast, we blew the whole movie for you. But if you have seen it but haven't seen it recently, go back and rewatch it. I think you're going to find it really holds up well. And some of the themes that they talk about here are absolutely as relevant today as they ever were in the 90s.
So if it's that high rated for you, what would you rate the movie out of 10?
Give it a 9 out of 10. No question.
Oh, wow. I go a bit lower. I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10. Because again, I thought it was good, but I thought it was a little bit too long. I wasn't sure some of the themes, what it was trying to say. I thought some of the performances were quite strong, but overall, like I didn't think it was great. So maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I want to say I was looking at the IMDb. I can't find it right now, unfortunately. I'm not going to slow down the podcast to do it, but like the IMDb ranks, like you can rank a movie out of 10, and so every movie has a ranking. So this one's ranked 8.8 out of 10, and I want to say
that's very high. That's very high.
It's like it's in the top 20 all-time IMDb movies. Like the fans clearly love it.
Yeah, I think Rotten Tomatoes is very high too. So yeah, obviously the fans love it. So
yeah, it's a really strong movie for a lot of reasons. I get it. If you're not a fan of violence in movies, like then this is not your jam, and that's fine. But I don't think anyone's going to watch this movie and then walk out and go, I didn't realize there was going to be that much blood and fighting. Like, it's called Fight Club.
It's called Fight Club.
Come on, if you're not a fan of this kind of film, like, don't worry about it. Don't see it. Like, you don't have to watch every movie that comes across your
maybe just because I like 80s comedies so much. You know, maybe it's just not my jam, I guess.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. All right. On that note, what do you say that we have some
fun with Caveman?
All right, Derek. So it's time once again for you to take a seat in the winner's circle of the $100,000 pyramid. All right, Derek, you've been in the seat before. You know how this works. You got 60 seconds to make it to the top of the pyramid. You have to correctly guess all 6 categories, and all I can do is give you lists as clues. Okay?
I love it.
So, you all set? You strapped in? You ready to go?
Are there any common themes here, or we're just...
Nope, just
okay.
$100,000 pyramid.
Don't use your hands. Remember.
No, exactly. The themes when we do it on the show are usually pop culture related.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So, all right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Go. Samurai, Coneheads, The Church Lady.
Oh, Saturday Night Live sketches.
Yeah, Debbie Downer.
Recurring Saturday Night Live sketches.
The Caveman Lawyer. Fred Garvin.
I don't know. Pass.
House of Cards. Stranger Things. Squid Game.
Series on Netflix.
Yes. Christopher Reeve. Tom Cavill.
Oh, actors who played Superman.
Yes. Star Wars. Jaws. Raiders of the Lost Ark. E.T. Superman.
John Williams movie.
Yes.
Yes.
Interstellar. Blade Runner. Snowpiercer. Soylent Green. Planet of the Apes.
Science fiction movies.
The Matrix. District 9.
Movies that take place in the future.
Logan's Run. Escape from New York.
I don't know. Pass.
Children of Men. Freaks and Geeks. My So-Called Life. The Queen's Gambit. Firefly. The original Battlestar Galactica.
Series that only were 1 season.
Yes. Okay, we gotta go back. Samurai, Coneheads, Pat, Debbie Downer, The Church Lady, Pat, Fred Garvin.
I don't know. Recurring sketches on Saturday Night Live. No, I already said that.
Pat, The Samurai. It was SNL characters, and you kept saying sketches. You had to say characters. And then the other one that you didn't get.
The science fiction?
It was dystopian movies. Dystopian future movies.
Oh, I guess.
You mentioned future, but you didn't get
I don't think of Interstellar as dystopian, but I guess, yeah.
Because it's like, isn't it like. Yeah, there's all the like nuclear waste and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No. No, good. I just can't believe I missed that.
Yeah, they were tough ones. Well, you did pretty good. You got what do you got? 51, 52. You got $350. Not bad. Not bad.
Nice.
You can buy a couple of DVDs with that. You can buy a couple of dystopian future DVDs.
You said that to me as an e-transfer.
Yeah, there you go. I will. I'll send it off to you. The check is in the mail. The e-transfer is in the mail. That's the new. The
e-transfer is in the email.
Yeah, in the email. There you go.
There you go.
All right. So next time out, we're going to do a topic, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And
you're not going away on holidays next week? You're back again?
Not next week, but not too long. We got the March break coming up, so we may take a week off as we get closer. But we just did 2 movies from 1999 after we talked about 1999. I think there's a lot of fruit left on the vine here, so I think we may need to revisit some more 1999 down the road before the end of the year. But for now, I think we've got our temporary fix, 99. So we'll come back with a topic. We'll do a couple of reviews, and then maybe we'll hit 1999 again in a month or so.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So that's what we'll do. We'll hit a topic next time. So until then, I'm Chris McBrien. On behalf of myself and Derek Myers, and of course our producer Sloth, I want to say thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.